What is an American? It's a question I intensely struggled with finding an answer to when I was young. After all, if you're a European or you're like me and you grew up in a European American immigrant household living in the States, it's possible you and those around you wrote off Americanness as little more than a kitschy Disneyfied knockoff of the European cultural traditions of your family. Now, I certainly did, especially with regards to food. And in the small northeastern town where I grew up, the people there, they didn't really help matters. Sure, there were the familiar background aspects of American life anybody can see, even an immigrant, whether it be a Memorial Day parade, a Walmart, or easy access to a McDonald's hamburger. But nobody there could ever explain what exactly an American is or what exactly it is America stood for. It was just the typical village drivel of who died, who got pregnant, and now who's having health issues. But all this is beside the point. Point being, it took me years of looking at America from a distance to get to the point where I could say I knew exactly what it meant to be an American. The biggest takeaway from all that time is that in comparison to the other peoples of the world, Americans are quite unusual. This has the effect of making otherwise impossible things in America quite possible, and things that are elsewhere very straightforward, impossible in America. And this is because there are certain unique American peculiarities, ones that transcend socioeconomic status, race, and religion. And as a result, I've realized that in order to understand the American person and the national ethos, it's important to see clearly the traits that distinguish Americans from everybody else. Trait 1. Incredibly socially egalitarian. Nearly every country in the world has some form of a rigid socioeconomic hierarchy that pervades every aspect of life. India, for example, has the caste system. Latin America has a medieval European-style feudal system of protected landowners and unlearned peasantry called the encomienda system. Britain has its infamous class system. And with Korean and Japanese, the hierarchy of social relations is firmly baked into how people speak the language itself. Point is, in many places, your lot in life and assigned social class is something you were born with, and no amount of wanting something else is going to change that. However, the United States, thanks to the influence of the Quakers, is not like this, at least not as much. It strikes a unique balance of social egalitarianism that's unlike anything else in the world. Yes, Scandinavia and Australia are also socially egalitarian, but unlike those places, the United States does not have a deep ingrained social pressure to conform to normality. No law of Jente, no tall poppy syndrome, just a strong culturally ingrained belief that anybody can make a better life for themselves, and that demonstrable self-improvement should be cause for celebration, not a sign that someone is out of line and either should be shunned or put in their place. And the consequence of this is that the Christian value of the inherent equality of the soul's potential is most fully realized in the United States. A person of perceived low birth, a formerly homeless addict, a former criminal, or anybody who's otherwise low, provided they cast aside any former toxic ways they had and devote themselves to self-improvement, who subsequently goes on to become successful, is actually more celebrated in American society than the person that made their lot without any detours. Why? Because not only does it make for a better story, it's living proof that any soul can be saved, and that if a person chooses to do the right thing, their life's going to get better, and that God is great. In comparison, no such leeway would be given to somebody like a Romani in Europe, a former Yakuza in Japan, or a Dalit in India. No matter how much they try to improve themselves, the society would still treat them as if they were still inferior and cast them aside like garbage. Translation to American, they were judged for their value, determined by something that they or their parents formerly were instead of who they are as an individual currently are. To use this example, let's look at a guy by the name of Michael Franzese. He was born to a father who was a longtime second-in-command for the Colombo organized crime family. He followed in his father's footsteps, and he himself became a well-known mafia captain in his own right during the 1980s. So successful he was at that life that at one point he was making the Colombos millions of dollars daily through a gasoline tax defrauding scheme. However, 1991, during a stint in prison and under the influence of his wife, he became a born-again Christian and left organized crime behind. Nowadays, he's a motivational speaker specializing in Christian outreach and has quite the successful social media career. And this particular type of redemption, in my experience, is only possible in America, because on a sociocultural level, it's far more forgiving of an individual's mistakes than anywhere else. A person owns their mistakes and makes a sustained and sincere attempt at redemption, turns themselves around. Their coming to Jesus story is celebrated. Their past is relevant, sure, but it doesn't stigmatize them from getting a better future for themselves. The prodigal son's return is rejoiced, so to speak. And despite American history and society having plenty of misdeeds, it really is one of the most socially egalitarian and forgiving societies in the world. Trait 2, a feel-good culture. When I was young, I remember reading something that was talking about making tomato sauce, and I forgot everything in that article, except for one thing I still remember clear as day, even 2 decades on. The sauce is too thin, it's home style. The sauce is too thick, it's chunky. I never could quite put my finger on why this line has stuck with me for all these years, but then it hit me. In either case, the sauce wasn't made to the highest standard, wasn't done quite right. However, with a new label, it's not a bad sauce, it's home style. It's in the word, makes you think of home. And in the case of it's chunky, it's the feeling of the word, is that it's authentic, it's substantive, it's made with real ingredients. Makes it so either of those sauces would be something to be proud of. However, these new labels don't change the underlying substance of the fact that the sauce wasn't made right. But in America, you can't have that. Why? It doesn't feel good. So what does this mean objectively? It means that in America, there is a sort of cultural prohibition on having objective standards as being too judgmental, leaving only room for the subjective and feel-good words. It's so prevalent that even if I'm not trying, I catch myself slipping into it, simply because it's been so ingrained in me from such a young age. I'll give you an example from when I was 7 years old. For some reason, I decided to try to draw a hand map of the United States with my pencil. And I thought it was going pretty good until I realized something. I was missing a state in the center, Nebraska, and there was no space to put it where it went on the map without changing everything. So perfectionist me was not happy. But my mother's response? Who needs Nebraska? This did not solve my underlying problem, but that retort was so ridiculous I couldn't help but laugh. Peak good vibes. And this manifests itself in the entire business culture too. To get an idea, look no further than the famous scene from episode 1 of the TV show Mad Men. Set in the backdrop in 1960s America and the growing understanding of health risks associated with tobacco use, the main character, Don Draper, works in the most American profession ever, advertising. In this scene, he's meeting with the owner of Lucky Strike, a tobacco company. Their problem is that they cannot market their cigarettes as healthy anymore. And their meeting goes on and on without a solution. And when all hope looks lost and the owner is literally walking out the door, Draper, after hearing offhand how the cigarettes are made, comes up with a new advertising slogan. It's toasted. And this is how it goes back to the feel-good culture and what the real problem is. With the government's action against tobacco companies, the health claims that Lucky Strike had previously used to sell its cigarettes were now banned. Those health claims were a way to make their customers feel good, and thus buy their product. But with the banning of health claims, Lucky Strike's problem wasn't that it could make those health claims or no longer could. It's that it had lost its main way of making its customers feel good. And Draper, with the slogan, "It's toasted," gave them a legally compliant way to offer similar feelings. Look at the word toasted. Calls to mind the scent of a home-cooked breakfast. And home-cooked breakfast? That feels good to think about. And that's because, as with anywhere, advertising is designed to sell products. And in America, the nation that prioritizes good vibes above all else, that means advertising isn't about selling the product, it's about selling good vibes. The product you are selling is just a means to an end to sell a way for the customer to feel good. Let's take, for example, Apple. They don't sell iPhones. They sell being with it. Tesla doesn't sell electric cars. They sell a techie, entrepreneurial self-image. And Jeep, they don't sell off-roaders. They sell feelings of adventure and American nostalgia. And this cult of good vibes has a powerful grip on American society. It influences how individuals communicate with each other on the small scale and on the large scale, such as how large megacorps go about selling their products to the masses. Trait 3, arrogance. As I've spent more and more time outside the US, there's one toxic yet distinctly American trait that I've noticed, but it's hardly ever acknowledged by anybody. Arrogance. Full confession, my younger years, I was guilty as charged for having this trait. I was pretty arrogant too. The most difficult galaxy in the universe for us to take a full picture of is our own Milky Way, since we're inside of it, and the same logic applies here, as this distinctly American arrogance is so widespread and subtle that without the benefit of a wider perspective, most people will never even be able to see it. And sadly, it's common for Americans to cast judgment based on hubris and preconceived notions without even considering the underlying logic of what's being said. For example, the rare case where I openly talk about my life in China with Americans, 9 times out of 10, zero interest. Society has already given them a propagandized narrative that everywhere that isn't America is some backwards crap hole. So the response back? It's a blank stare. And in my experience, I like this response better, because then I can bounce from the conversation and get on with my day with people who actually matter. What's more insufferable is when a question is thrown back at me. In that case, 9 times out of 10, it's something along the lines of, "But aren't they communist?" So with only 1 in 100 odds of any actual interest in what I have to say, I naturally keep my mouth shut, unless a person shows some sign of any genuine capacity for learning and curiosity. And that's just from conversations with older Northeastern white liberals, the ones that publicly display themselves as the people that are more open-minded to the world and supposedly less patriotic than the American right wing is. The right, meanwhile, holds zero qualms about openly stating that their way of life is the best way of life in the entire world, and will much more openly state that they think America is the best country in the world and most other places are probably crap holes. The only difference between Americans on the left and right in this regard is how honest and direct they are in stating this. And this arrogance and lack of curiosity extends to travel as well, as few of my own family members have ever expressed any desire to visit China where I live and thus see my life here. Instead, most Americans opt to travel to socially acceptable places. That can take the form of a cruise or a resort trip, where the entire experience is completely controlled and commercialized, with deliberate barriers put up so that they don't have to interact with a different culture and a way of doing things. In a way, that means many Americans have already made up their mind before seeing things for themselves. Europe? Ooh, the food and the culture. Japan? So orderly and civilized. Mexico? As my mother always said, don't drink the water. China? Oh, so polluted and crowded, I'm sorry. While for most people, traveling is a chance to learn and grow, but for many Americans, sadly, it's not. For many, travel is instead about reinforcing their preconceived stereotypes and taking pictures so they can brag to their friends in real life and on social media that they did some socially acceptable thing. Trait 4, the in-your-face national pride. America, fuck yeah! This is the phrase that best sums up the particularly American flavor of nationalism. And the easiest case in point of it, the ubiquity of the American flag. And I get it, when you're in a country, you expect to see its flag somewhere in some time. Government buildings, international sporting events, even at a post office or something. But in America, the national flag is inescapable. So much so, it's safe to say an American flag is inescapable in America as are portraits of Kim Jong-un in North Korea. And in North Korea, there are at least clear rules about where and how the Kim family portraits are to be placed. But in America, the flag can and does go literally anywhere on anything. Gravestones, t-shirts, school classrooms, you name it, flag can and often is placed there. Most bizarrely though, you'll sometimes see 1, 2, or even more full-size flags mounted on a pickup truck's cargo bed or trailer hitch so the flag flies while it's driving. You do you, sure, but to me, it just looks like a ridiculous safety hazard. And that's without getting into the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, pledges of allegiance, they're a thing in most countries, such as in the context of gaining citizenship, swearing an oath of allegiance to join the nation's military, or being sworn in as an elected public official. These make sense. They're official state functions, demanding and dependent on your allegiance to it to properly carry out. But in America, all children in schools, even kindergartners, have to recite it every single morning. It's the thing that happens before class even starts. All students have to stand up, and the pledge is recited over a loudspeaker and said synchronously by both the teachers and the students. And to me, an oath of allegiance should be solemn and serious and meaningfully done by one's own free will. To socially coerce students as young as 5 into reciting it ritualistically on a daily basis not only reeks of brainwashing, it trivializes and renders meaningless the words of the oath. For me, the pledge didn't make me love America. It made me hate it, at least for a while. The words were contradictory to the actions of the people that were perpetuating it. And while I would eventually like to live in America again, I very do much appreciate what it has to offer, the pledge as a daily ritual was counterproductive in fostering positive feelings toward the country as a whole, in my case. And I cast aside that hatred once I was given the headspace and the breathing room to do so on my own terms. The best patriots are the ones that choose to be patriotic of their own volition and internal drive, not the ones that are just following what everybody else is doing. Those mindless people, instead, they steamroll a country into ruin. And that was never the founding ethos of the United States to begin with. Good or bad, each of these distinctly American traits helped pave the way for the nation to become the global superpower that it is. So what do you guys think? What, in your view, makes for an American and makes them distinct from everybody else around the world? Let me know down in the comments below. If you like this video, feel free to comment, drop a like, or even subscribe. Till next time.